Let's yap about text editors. Me, with my entire family, got knocked out by some sickness for an entire week, so I have no energy for anything else. And about a year ago, I posted on Twitter where I enumerated a requirements for my perfect text editor, which still doesn't exist. And today I want to bring this discussion back and expand on all of these points, and then maybe you, my dear viewer, will add something that maybe you are missing from modern text and code editors, and we can have some fun discussion about it. And the point number one, the most important one, is the text editor should be graphical, because terminals, yes, are for people who stuck in 1970s. And text editor being graphical implies a lot of things. So for example, I should be able to just open images if I want, right here in my text editor. I don't think it should be any controversial, right? And also, a text editor being graphical means that it can mix various font types. So for example, Emacs has built-in support for emojis, and if I let's insert a Christmas tree, you can see that now this Christmas tree is being displayed in the same font as my regular text, and already you can see that it is a bit wider, right? Even though the font that I'm using, Hack, is monospaced, the Christmas tree is kind of different. And if I go to my config for a moment and enable this line, which by the way sets a special font just for emojis, because Emacs can just do this, and I apply this configuration line, you can see that now this emoji is displayed in a different font. So this is kind of stuff that graphical text editors just let you do. And of course, what I can also do is I can zoom emoji in like this. So for example, I can do silly stuff like that. And you just can't really do that in a terminal text editor, right? A graphical program, it does not put you on the grid. Graphical program is more flexible. You can just display more stuff in it. And also, coincidentally, let's move to a second point, which is variable with fonts. I think that a text editor supporting only monospaced font is kinda silly. I don't only write code. I prefer to write long emails or long posts in a real text editor before I paste them into a web form, because web forms are usually horrible. And sometimes I want to read some text with, nice typesetting. And usually you just can't really do that in a terminal. But if you're using a graphical one, it's very easy. You just do something like this, set font, and Emacs has a nice GUI picker where you can do something like, I don't know, liberation serif regular. And here you go, now you just have a regular, normal, non-monospaced font. I think this is kind of important. Next point might sound really silly to you if you are using any modern text editor. It's this. It should use physical scan key codes instead of whatever current keyboard layout is for editor action. What does this mean? If now in Emacs I try to press keys around, you see I can just navigate back and forth, and I can drop in insert mode, I can start typing, it's all good. If I switch my system keyboard layout, now I'm in Russian. I can type, right? I can press escape in order to go back to normal mode. And by the way, I'm using evil mode, which is a Vim emulation inside of Emacs. That's why I have all of these Vim modes. But the thing is that if I start pressing HJKL, you can see in the bottom left corner here, it says R is undefined. Or if I press K, it says L is undefined. So it tries to match editor actions through my current keyboard layout, instead through the physical key on a physical keyboard. And this really only happens on old software. New software usually does not have the same issues. So this is Visual Studio Code, and I can type in English, and I can switch to Russian, and I can type in Russian no problem. And at the same time, when I press Ctrl Z without switching keyboard layout, it just works. I can select something, I can press Ctrl C, Ctrl V. it just works. You don't even think about it, you switch your keyboard layout, but your hotkeys keep working. And again, if you already use any modern text editor, you are probably very surprised that it's not just how all software work, right? And terminal text editors such as NeoVim or even something modern like Helix, they also can't do this, but for different reasons. I actually have a completely separate video about it. I'm gonna link it in the description. Next point is probably the most obvious one. I need smooth performance in 4K. I hope it's not controversial, but for some reason, a lot of modern tools, they just don't have it. So Emacs definitely doesn't have it. If I'm trying to enable smooth scrolling and scroll with my mouse wheel, Emacs likes to stutter, and Visual Studio Code also. It's just like every time I type, I just see these micro stutters and delay, maybe garbage collection hits in, maybe something else, but I don't see 165 FPS from this software. So I think a modern text editor should run at native resolution and at native refresh rate. So in my case, 1440p 165. On my other monitor, it would be something like 4K 120, I don't know. And as far as I know, Z Sublime and 10x editors, they have pretty smooth performance at 4K, but I think only Z of all of them has proper unlock for refresh rate. Maybe 10x, but I haven't used it in a while because it's Windows only. I think this is mandatory. If I can run a full-blown 3D game on my computer that renders an entire world with a lot of meshes and also displays some text at smooth 165 FPS, I feel like a text editor should be able to do it as well, don't you think? Next point is also another obvious one. It should be cross-platform, right? I'm using Linux, Windows, and also sometimes Mac OS, so this editor should work at least on these 3 operating systems. Now we are moving to more personal stuff. So first one of these is support for modal editing. It can be out of the box or it can be configurable somehow, but I'm a heavy Vim mode user even here in Emacs. I like a distinction between modes because I'm a fat fingerer, so for me personally it helps when I distinguish navigation versus text insertion. It's not even about carpal tunnel or anything like that. I never had these problems. Next one will be super controversial and super spicy. I want arbitrary code execution. And let me explain. This sounds very bad in an LLM era and in the age of massive supply chain attacks, but I'm an Emacs user and I want to be able to just open a file and start writing code here and execute it. I want to be able to configure my software like that. I am a power user. And to my knowledge, only other editors that just let you do this like Emacs does are for Coder, where you just compile a DLL and link it against your editor. It's Deceased Atom editor, where you just open init.CoffeeScript and just write CoffeeScript in there. And a new text editor that's called Fret, where author just literally ships it with a C compiler that lets you hot swap executable pages or something crazy like that. It is essentially like Emacs, but you can write C. It's actually very cool. So this is a kind of a very niche feature because all other text editors, they limit you in one way or another. New Vim is kind of like that with Lua stuff, right? But it's not as integrated, I guess. And editors like Zed and Helix, they are sandboxed because I think in Helix you don't have any plugin infrastructure at all. And if they will add it, it will be something WebAssembly related, and Zed does the same thing. I might be wrong though. I just know it's not arbitrary. And in VS Code, in order to add a plugin, even just a color scheme, there's just so much bureaucracy. You can't just open a file and start writing nonsense there. So again, as an Emacs guy, I want this ability in my next text editor. Next point is a continuation of this one, and I don't want any fake extension script language. So no Vim script, Python, Lisp, Lua, JavaScript, all goes to the trash. I want a real programming language that produces a real debug info that compiles to DLL that you probably link to an editor and run it like that. C, C++, Jai, it can be also Zig, Odin. The point is, it should be a real programming language, you know. And this might sound controversial, right? Because I think from existing text editors, only two that do it are Forcoder and Thread Editor that I just mentioned. So this just reduces a market fit by a lot. Okay, next one is not as controversial. So we are almost at the end of the drama section. I want an ability to open and edit very big files. We're talking logs, huge CSVs, occasional minified JavaScript. And this is not something that modern text editors are that well equipped with. So if you open something like this in VS Code, it will instantly remove half of the text editor capabilities. It will turn off syntax highlight. It will don't let you use any of its IntelliSense features and stuff like that, just because a file like 20 megabytes long. And if we're talking about Emacs, if you dare to open a minimized single line JavaScript file, Emacs will either just hang or straight up crash. NeoVim usually works, but it takes a lot of time to open such file, and then navigation is really slow. So the best text editors for this kind of workload is something like Notepad++. When I used Windows, I just knew that, okay, if I need big file, I have to open it in Notepad++ because everything else is super bad. And this new text editor should handle this gracefully. Maybe not as smooth as something like code files, but it shouldn't poop itself, okay? Next one is pretty chill. I want native multiple cursors, not through some kind of a plugin or a hack. So multiple cursors in Emacs is literally a hack. I don't even know if Vim has it. At the moment, I'm mostly achieving the same thing that multiple cursors do with either like columnar selection or some kind of a macro. I get used to it, I'm pretty efficient with it, but I can't acknowledge the fact that multiple cursors are just objectively better. And for the short time that I've tried Cocoon and Helix, I was kinda jealous, not gonna lie. And the last mandatory requirement is self-documentation. I shouldn't have to open a manual page to look for hotkeys. If we look at something like NeoVim, I can do like help p, right? And it will bring me to a file called change.txt, where a meaning of p is hard-coded in a text file. Yeah, here it is. It's literally hard-coded in a text file. And if a meaning of p would be changed, I know that Vim users don't really do it, but if they did, this manual is now irrelevant. They do it for different letters, right? Capital Y, for example. New Vim users always remap it. And in Emacs, on the other hand, it's all dynamic in a sense that I can press Ctrl H K and it asks me describe following key, mouse click on menu item, right? And I can do something like K. What does K do? And it says K runs command eval previous line. And you can go to the code definition of how it implements itself and stuff like that. So I want this kind of power from my text editor. I want documentation. If I, don't remember what command is called, it's something like find, find file. This is what I want to know. And it shows me hotkey, it shows me the documentation, it shows me everything I need to know about it. In this particular case, I think Emacs is literally the king of editors and maybe of software altogether. So I really want it in my next text editor. So these are mandatory. Here they are in front of you. Everything else, like LSP, tree-sitter, animations, email clients, IRC clients, Tetris games, everything else can be achieved with arbitrary code execution on top of the core that I have in mind. Alright, so are there any text editors that come close to this list? And I think there are two at the moment. So first of them is kind of an OG. It's a Forcoder, which is a text editor originally built by Alan Webster and now maintained by the community. It is cross-platform. It supports Windows, Linux, and Mac. And you extend it by writing C++ and then compile it into a DLL and link it together with an editor. So in this period, it kind of comes close, but it has some issues. For example, it is hard locked at 60 FPS, and on Linux it supports only X11, which means it doesn't support multiple monitors with mixed DPI, and there are some other stuff which maybe it can be added. I don't know. As you can see, it is maintained. So the last change was just last week. So I don't know, maybe it's on the table or maybe it's not. I actually haven't really asked. And the second editor is Thread. This is a new editor, and I recently saw author of this video on Łukasz podcast, and him demoing his editor kind of brought back memories about that thread I posted, and I started thinking about it again. This editor is not out yet. You need to join the Discord to ask for beta. I haven't tried it, so it's not sponsored or anything like that. I just think it's very cool. If you want, go watch Łukasz podcast with the author. I'm gonna link it down in the description. Actually, Alan Webster also was on Łukasz podcast and talked about for coders, so I'm gonna link that one too. Sometimes I also think like, oh man, I probably need to write my own text editor. But then I kinda restrain myself because this is one of those, like projects of potentially a lifetime that I don't really know if I want to get into it, but maybe I should. I don't know. Life is hard. Let me know what you think. Drop your hottest text editor takes in the comments. Tell me what you want, what you are missing from text editors. If something that you want maybe exists in different text editors and you have to match them and use multiple of them, just let me know what you think. I'm actually super interested. Again, thank you very much for watching. Next video is gonna be a technical one, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.